Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling a stack of sources that honestly, it feels less like a religious text and a lot more like a script for a really gritty HBO war drama. We are talking about the Book of Judges.
Yeah, it is certainly not the version of history you usually get in a children's storybook.
No, definitely not.
I mean, if you have those images of, the flannel graph Sunday school lessons in your head, you might want to just set those aside entirely.
Yeah,
Because this is raw, it's violent, and it is incredibly messy.
absolutely. And just to set the expectations right out of the gate for you listening, when we say judge, we aren't talking about guys in black robes sitting behind a bench banging gavels.
Right.
We aren't talking about the Supreme Court here.
No, not at all. In the context of the ancient Near East, and specifically in this text, a judge, or the Hebrew word is shofet, is really a military leader, a deliverer, sometimes, honestly, a warlord.
A warlord, yeah.
They're individuals raised up in a time of absolute chaos to break the yoke of oppression. They're much more like localized tribal chieftains than legal scholars.
Right. And we have a lot of ground to cover today because the sources paint a picture of a nation in just a severe downward spiral. We're looking at the era immediately following the death of Joshua.
Exactly.
So the conquest of the land is technically over, but the war is definitely not done.
That is the critical context.
Yeah.
The great leader, Joshua, is dead. And the generation that saw the Red Sea part, the generation that saw the walls of Jericho fall, they have all passed on.
Right, the eyewitnesses are gone.
Yes. And suddenly there is this massive leadership vacuum. The sources describe it as a very sobering spiritual climate.
It feels like the hangover after the victory party.
That is a perfect analogy. The adrenaline of the conquest has totally faded, and now they have to actually sit down and live in the land. And the book opens with a question that really sets the stage for everything we are going to unpack. The people ask, who shall go up for us against the Canaanites first, to fight against them?
Which, I mean, it seems like a pretty standard military question, just who is in charge?
It is, but it also highlights the core crisis. Under Moses and under Joshua, they never had to ask that.
Oh, that's true. They just knew.
They knew exactly who was leading. Now, they are just this loose confederation of tribes with no central government, no king, and apparently no real plan.
And our mission today is to explore what the source material calls the anatomy of compromise.
Yes.
We are going to look at how a society goes from a highly unified conquest force to a nation literally tearing itself apart in civil war.
We are tracing the rot. We're looking at how partial obedience, doing most of what you're supposed to, but not all of it, how that slowly festers into total moral collapse.
It's a bit terrifying how relevant that sounds to just about any era of history, honestly.
It really is. The book serves as a spiritual X-ray for human nature. It proves a very hard truth. Time does not heal sin, it matures it.
Wow. Time matures it.
Yeah, if you leave a problem alone, it doesn't just naturally get better, it gets bigger.
Oof. Okay, let's unpack that. Because there is this recurring line, a refrain that keeps popping up in our sources, that defines this entire era. It says, in those days there was no king in Israel, but every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
That is the haunting melody of the whole book. And on the surface, to a modern ear, that sounds like freedom, doesn't it?
Oh, completely. It sounds like follow your heart, do your own truth.
Right. Do what feels right to you. It sounds like supreme liberty.
But in the text, it's framed as an absolute disaster.
Exactly. It leads directly to bondage and chaos. It's a paradox. This is a book about human failure, monumental, catastrophic failure, but it's also about the persistence of divine mercy, using some very, very unexpected instruments.
So let's jump into section 1, the trap of partial obedience.
Yeah.
Book starts, and it actually looks like things might go okay, right?
Yeah.
Judah and Simeon team up, they go to battle, and they defeat this guy named Adonibechek.
Right. And the details here are grim immediately. They catch this king Adonibechek and they cut off his thumbs and his big toes.
Yeah, that was incredibly graphic. Is that just gratuitous violence, or is there a point to that specific mutilation?
It is actually highly tactical and symbolic. If you cut off a man's thumbs, he can't hold a sword or a spear effectively ever again. And if you cut off his big toes, he loses his balance. He can't run. He certainly can't lead an infantry charge. It's a way of neutralizing a warrior permanently without killing him. But there's a layer of irony here, too. Adonibechek actually admits that 70 kings with their thumbs and toes cut off used to gather scraps under his table.
70. So he was an absolute monster.
He was a brutal warlord who humiliated others for sport. He says, "As I have done, so God hath requited me." So right at the start, we see this flash of poetic justice. But then the drift begins. The source material highlights a very specific phrase regarding the tribes. They did not fully drive out the inhabitants.
That is the seed of the entire tragedy, isn't it?
It is. You have to remember, the original command was to remove the Canaanite culture entirely because of its corruption. We are talking about a culture deeply entrenched in child sacrifice, temple prostitution, things that were diametrically opposed to the ethical monotheism Israel was supposed to represent.
Right. It wasn't just about real estate.
Exactly. But instead, the tribes had some early military success, and they thought, well, let's just make them tributaries. Let's make them pay taxes. We can just live alongside them.
They settled. They essentially chose economics over obedience.
Precisely. They chose comfort and profit. And the analysis here is profound. Partial obedience becomes permanent compromise.
That is such a heavy line.
They thought they were being pragmatic. Why kill them or drive them out when we can have a cheap labor force? But they were actually building their own trap.
And the consequences are immediate.
Mm-hmm.
We have this scene at a place called Bochum. The angel of the Lord appears and basically drops the gavel on the whole nation.
It is a devastating verdict. The angel says effectively, I brought you out of Egypt. I kept my covenant, but you have not obeyed my voice. And because they didn't throw down the altars, the angel says the inhabitants will become thorns in your sides, and their gods will be a snare.
Thorns in your sides. That sounds like just a constant nagging pain.
It implies that they will never, ever be at peace. They will always be irritated, poked, and bled by the culture they refuse to remove. And the snare part is even worse.
Because a snare traps you?
Right. It means they will be trapped by the very gods they thought they could just ignore or control.
And the people weep. They just cry their eyes out. They call the place Bochum, which literally means weepers.
They do. It's a massive emotional release.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about the Book of Judges, and this is a critical psychological insight for you listening. Tears do not always equal change.
Wow.
You can weep over the consequences of your actions without actually changing the behavior that caused them. It's remorse, not repentance.
I'm sorry I got caught versus I'm sorry I did it.
Exactly. They cried, they offered sacrifices, and then they went right back to living with the Canaanites.
And then we hit what might be the scariest verse in the early chapters. It talks about the generational shift. It says, there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel.
That is the moment the anchor snaps. You have a whole generation that rises up who maybe knows about the history. Like, they might know the stories of the Red Sea the way we know about George Washington crossing the Delaware.
Right, as a historical fact.
Right, but they don't know the Lord personally. They haven't experienced the deliverance themselves.
But how does that happen? How do you lose an entire national identity in just one generation?
It happens when the parents fail to transfer the faith. It implies that the previous generation enjoyed the victory, but they didn't do the hard daily work of discipleship. They stopped telling the story. They stopped living it out in a compelling way. And so the vacuum is filled by the surrounding culture.
And that sets up the cycle. Let's break this down because the sources call it the loop. And this loop dries the narrative for the next few hundred years.
It is a depressing, mechanical, six-stage loop. Stage one is sin. Israel does evil, usually by abandoning Yahweh and serving the Baalim and the Ashtaroth, the local Canaanite fertility and storm gods.
Okay, so they assimilate. Then what?
Stage two is oppression. God removes his protection and sells them into the hands of their enemies.
So the thorns start poking.
Exactly. The raiders come in, they steal the crops, they burn the towns, life becomes utterly miserable. Which leads to stage three, groaning.
They cry out.
The people suffer and they cry out. But note that they don't always repent here. They just scream because it hurts.
Like touching a hot stove.
Yes. Then stage four is deliverance. God, in his absolute mercy, raises up a judge, a savior.
To break the oppression.
Right. Which brings stage five, rest. The judge defeats the enemy and the land has peace, usually for 40 or 80 years.
A whole generation of peace. And then?
Then stage six happens, relapse. The judge dies, the restraint is completely gone, and the people corrupt themselves more than their fathers did. And the wheel turns right back to stage one.
It is exhausting just hearing you describe it. It feels so futile.
It is meant to be exhausting. The very structure of the book is designed to make the reader feel the fatigue of this cycle. It shows that without a permanent change in the heart, you are just running in circles. You can change the circumstances, you can get rid of the oppression, but if you don't change the heart, you will end up right back in the pit.
So let's meet some of these deliverers who pop up in stage 4. The first one mentioned in the sources is Othniel.
Othniel is sort of the baseline judge. He is the control group in the experiment.
It's a gold standard.
Exactly. He is Caleb's younger brother or nephew, depending on how you translate the Hebrew. He represents that last solid link to the faithful generation. The Spirit of the Lord comes on him. He goes to war. He wins. The land has rest. He does everything right.
He's the standard against which everyone else is measured. But after him, things get weirder.
Much weirder. The ideal judge is gone. And now God has to use whatever is available.
Which brings us to Ehud. Now, I have to say, this is one of the most vivid cinematic stories in the Bible. The sources point out something very specific about him immediately. He's left-handed.
That is a crucial tactical detail. You have to understand ancient combat. Soldiers carried their heavy shield in their left hand and their sword in their right. Because of that, palace guards would systematically check for weapons on a visitor's left hip, because that is where a right-handed man draws from across his body.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. And Ehud is a Benjamite, which ironically means son of my right hand.
Yes.
But he is left-handed.
Exactly. So Israel is serving Eglon, the king of Moab, and Eglon is described, and the text is really not being polite here, as a very fat man. Ehud goes to pay the tribute, basically the mafia protection tax, but he has a plan. He is an assassin.
He means he's got some weapon, right?
A double-edged dagger, about a cubit long, so roughly 18 inches. And because he's left-handed, he straps it to his right thigh under his clothes.
Which is the unexpected place?
Exactly. He walks right past security. The guards pat down his left side, find absolutely nothing, and let him through to see the king.
So he pays the tribute, leaves, and then he comes back alone. And he tells the king, I have a secret errand for you, O king.
And Eglon, probably thinking it is a bribe, or maybe some secret intel from a traitor, sends everyone else out. He wants this info for himself. They are alone in the summer parlor, which was likely a rooftop chamber designed for cooling, which also served as the royal bathroom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Ehud walks up to him and says, I have a message from God for thee.
And then the deed.
Eglon stands up to receive the message out of reverence, and Ehud draws with his left hand. It's a move Eglon never saw coming because he was washing the wrong hand.
Right.
And Ehud thrusts the dagger into Eglon's belly. And the text is incredibly graphic here. It says the handle went in after the blade and the fat closed over it so he couldn't even draw the dagger out.
The dirt came out.
Which is a very polite King James way of saying the king's bowels released due to the massive trauma. It is a messy, gritty, smelly scene. Ehud locks the doors and escapes through the porch. The servants wait outside, smelling the odor, and they assume the king is
relieving himself.
Right, covering his feet is the ancient idiom.
So the sheer embarrassment of walking in on the king in the bathroom prevents them from checking on him.
Correct. They wait until they are ashamed, until it just gets way too awkward. And by the time they finally unlock the door, Ehud is long gone. He has rallied the Israelite troops, and the king is dead on the floor.
What is the main takeaway here? I mean, is it just a cool, violent action movie sequence?
It shows that God uses unlikely vessels and highly unexpected methods. A left-handed man, a hidden dagger, a locked door, and even utilizing the enemy's own physical excess against him. God breaks the oppression of his people, but he does it in a way that actively mocks the power of the oppressor.
It's also a reminder that God can work through what might be considered defects or abnormalities in that culture, like being left-handed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Then we get a very brief mention of Shamgar.
Right, Shamgar. He's interesting because he is barely there. It's literally one verse. He kills 600 Philistines with an ox goad.
An ox goad?
What even is an ox goad? Like a farming tool?
Yeah, it's a long wooden pole with a metal point on the end, used to drive cattle. The fact that he uses it implies the Israelites had been disarmed by the Philistines. They didn't have swords or spears, so Shamgar just uses what he has in his hand.
It's a lesson in resourcefulness.
It is. God doesn't need a high-tech army to deliver his people. He just needs one guy willing to swing a stick.
Which brings us to section 3 and one of the most famous pairings in the Bible, Deborah and Barak.
This is such a fascinating dynamic. Deborah is a prophetess, and she is actually judging Israel, meaning she's settling civil disputes under a palm tree. She is the recognized political and spiritual authority.
The undisputed leader.
Yes. She summons Barak, who is the military commander, and tells him God wants him to fight Sisera, the general of the massive Canaanite army.
Now, the sources say Sisera has 900 chariots of iron. That is basically like having 900 tanks against a bunch of lightly armed infantry.
It is terrifying state-of-the-art technology. Israel is vastly outgunned. Yeah. And Barak, he seems a little hesitant. He says to Deborah, if you go with me, I will go. If you don't, I won't.
Which seems like a lack of faith, doesn't it? Like he won't go without his spiritual security blanket.
It is certainly a hesitation. He wants the visible, physical presence of God's representative on the battlefield. And Deborah calls him out on it. She agrees to go, but she issues a prophecy right there. The journey that thou takest shall not be for thine honor, for the Lord shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman.
And everyone reading that assumes she means herself, right? She is the woman in charge.
Right. But the book of Judges absolutely loves a plot twist. The battle happens, God sends a massive rainstorm, the torrent of Kishon, which turns the entire battlefield into a swamp.
Oh.
Yes. Those 900 iron chariots, they get completely stuck in the mud, they become heavy, useless metal traps. It is total chaos. Sisera actually abandons his chariot and flees on foot.
He just runs away from his own army.
He runs, and he ends up at the tent of a woman named Jael.
Jael.
Yeah.
Now, this is a scene that is shocking on a deep cultural level. Jael is the wife of Heber the Kenite.
And the Kenites were neutral. They had a standing peace treaty with the Canaanites. So Sisera sees her tent and thinks he is perfectly safe. Jael comes out to meet him. She invites him in. She says, "Turn in, my lord, fear not."
She offers him hospitality.
Which is incredibly sacred in the ancient Near East. If you invite someone into your tent, you are swearing an oath to protect them with your own life. She gives him milk instead of water.
Why milk?
It was likely a heavy, warm milk, maybe fermented, designed to make him sleepy. She covers him with a mantle. He feels totally secure. He even tells her to stand guard at the door and lie if anyone asks if he's in there.
And then, when he is fast asleep,
she violates every single code of ancient hospitality in the most brutal way imaginable. She takes a tent nail, a long wooden or metal peg, and a heavy workman's hammer. She creeps up to him softly.
And she nails his head to the floor.
She drives the peg straight through his temples and into the dirt.
I mean, talk about unexpected instrument.
Exactly. The mighty general, the man with 900 iron chariots, isn't killed in a glorious duel with Barak on the battlefield. He is nailed to the dirt by a housewife in a domestic setting.
Wow.
It fulfills Deborah's prophecy perfectly, but in a way no one, especially not Barak, would have ever predicted. It is deeply shameful for Sisera, and it highlights that God really doesn't need the mighty men to win his battles.
And then they sing about it. Judges chapter 5 is just a whole song.
The Song of Deborah. It is a victory hymn. It's actually considered one of the oldest pieces of poetry in the entire Hebrew Bible. But it is not just praise, it is highly political.
How so?
It curses the tribes who didn't show up to fight. It says, "Curse ye Meroz, because they came not to the help of the Lord." It teaches us that in this holy war, neutrality simply wasn't an option. Staying home on your couch when God is moving is viewed as treason.
So we've had the assassin, the ox goad, and the tent peg. Now we move to section 3, Gideon. And honestly, Gideon is often held up as this great hero of faith like the Gideon Bible guys, right? Mm-hmm. But the sources seem to suggest his character is a bit more shaky.
It is much more complicated than the flannel graph suggests. When we first meet Gideon, he is threshing wheat in a wine press.
Break down that visual for us. Why does that matter?
Normally, you thresh wheat on a high hill in the open air so the wind can blow the chaff away while the heavier grain falls. You use a wine press, which is a carved hole in the rocky ground, to stomp grapes. If you are threshing wheat down in a hole, it is because you are terrified.
You're hiding.
You are hiding from the Midianites who are constantly raiding the land. He is literally doing his farming in a hole out of pure fear.
And right then, the angel of the Lord appears and calls him, "Thou mighty man of valor."
Which has to be ironic, right?
Yes.
Or prophetic. God is calling out what he will be, not what he is, in that very embarrassing moment. Gideon pushes back immediately. He is deeply cynical. He says, "If the Lord be with us, why is all this happening? Where are the miracles our fathers told us about?"
He sounds bitter.
He sounds exactly like a man living in the relapse stage of the cycle. He feels totally abandoned. But God gives him a mission anyway. Destroy the altar of Baal in your father's house.
And he does it.
He does. But the text explicitly notes he does it at night because he was afraid of his father's household and the men of the city.
So obedient, but still terrified.
Obedience in the presence of fear. He is a very reluctant hero. But then we get to the famous fleece.
Oh, the fleece. I feel like everyone uses this as a template for decision-making today. I'm going to put out a fleece to see if I should take this job.
Right. If it rains on Tuesday, I'll take the job. If it doesn't, I won't. But if you carefully analyze the text, the fleece is not an act of great faith. It is an act of deep doubt. Think about it. God had already told Gideon he would save Israel. He had already consumed a sacrifice with miraculous fire. The fleece demanding a physical sign where the wool is wet and the ground is dry, and then reversing it the next night, that was Gideon stalling.
He was dragging his feet.
He was testing God because he struggled to trust God's plain word.
That completely changes the perspective on that story. It's not a method to emulate. It's God being incredibly patient with a very fearful man.
Exactly. God stoops to Gideon's level of doubt to reassure him. And then comes the battle. Gideon gathers 32,000 men, and God looks at them and says, "Too many."
Lest Israel vaunt themselves, saying, "Mine own hand hath saved me."
God is obsessed with ensuring the glory goes to the right place, so he whittles them down. First, he says anyone who is afraid can just leave. 22,000 guys just turn around and walk away.
That has to be a massive morale killer. Imagine standing there, watching 2/3 of your army just quit before the battle even starts.
It would be terrifying. Then comes the water test. The remaining 10,000 men are brought to the water. God separates those who kneel down to drink versus those who lap water like a dog, bringing it up to their mouths with their hands.
And only 300 lapped.
There's a lot of debate about why. Some say the lappers were more alert and keeping their eyes on the horizon, but the main point is simply the number. God reduces the force to a ridiculous, mathematically impossible number. 300 men against a Midianite horde that the text describes as like grasshoppers for multitude.
And the strategy isn't even conventional warfare.
No swords initially, just trumpets, empty clay pitchers, and torches hidden inside the jars.
They surround the camp at night.
They blow the trumpets, smash the jars to suddenly reveal the light, and shout, "The sword of the Lord and of Gideon!"
It is pure psychological warfare.
It creates mass panic. In the pitch dark, the Midianites wake up, see lights everywhere, hear crashing. They assume they are surrounded by a massive army, and they just turn their swords on each other. Friendly fire. It is a total rout. A great victory delivered entirely by God, not by military might.
But, and this is a big but, the source material calls this next part the snare. Gideon's story doesn't end with a sunset ride into the credits.
No, this is where the Gideon story takes a very dark, tragic turn. After the victory, the people are ecstatic. They come to him and say, "Rule over us, you and your son." They want to make him king. They want to start a dynasty.
And Gideon says the right thing, doesn't he? He says, "The Lord shall rule over you."
His theology is absolutely perfect, but his actions are disastrous. In the very next breath, he says, "But I would have a request. Give me the golden earrings from the prey."
That sounds suspicious. It sounds a lot like Aaron and the golden calf.
It echoes that exactly. He collects 1,700 shekels of gold, and he makes a golden ephod.
What exactly is an ephod?
Usually it is a priestly garment, a vest worn by the high priest to seek God's will, but Gideon makes one out of solid gold. It might have been a statue in the shape of a vest, or a wearable item that was so obscenely expensive it became an idol. He sets it up in his hometown, Ophrah.
And the result?
The text is brutal. It says, "All Israel went thither a-whoring after it," which thing became a snare unto Gideon and to his house.
So he refused to be king politically, but he set himself up as a sort of rogue religious leader with a golden idol.
He acted like a king in all but name. He gathered many wives. He had 70 sons. He lived in absolute luxury. He even named one of his sons Abimelech, which literally translates to, "My father is king."
Wow.
So despite his pious words, he lived like pagan royalty. Success was far more dangerous to Gideon than the Midianites ever were. He survived the war, but he totally failed the peace.
That is a heavy, heavy lesson. And his legacy leads right into section 4, Abimelech.
Abimelech, the anti-judge. He is the monster created by Gideon's compromise. He is the son of Gideon's concubine from Shechem.
He's a usurper.
He goes to his mother's family in Shechem and plays the tribal card. He says, "Why serve 70 sons of Gideon when you can serve me, your bone and your flesh?" He hires vain and light persons, basically worthless mercenaries and thugs, with silver from a pagan temple.
And he goes to his father's house.
And commits one of the worst atrocities in the book. He slaughters his 70 half-brothers on one stone. A mass public execution.
Just to completely eliminate any rivals.
Yes. Only the youngest son, Jotham, survives by hiding. And Jotham climbs up Mount Gerizim, the traditional man of blessing, and he shouts down a scathing parable to the men of Shechem who just crowned Abimelech.
The parable of the trees. This feels like ancient political satire.
It is a brilliant political cartoon. Jotham says the trees went out to anoint a king. The olive tree says, should I leave my fatness, which honors God and man, just to go wave over the trees? The fig tree says, should I leave my sweetness? The vine says, should I leave my wine?
They all refuse because they are productive. They have actual jobs to do.
Exactly. Good leaders are often people who are busy doing good work and don't crave power for power's sake. But finally, the trees ask the bramble, the worthless thorn bush.
And the bramble accepts.
The bramble, which produces absolutely no fruit and offers no real shade, accepts eagerly. And it says, put your trust in my shadow. Which is ridiculous. A thorn bush casts no shadow. It's just a tangled, low-to-the-ground mess.
And a bramble adds a threat, doesn't it?
It does. If not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars. It is a dire warning. When you reject godly, productive leadership, you get a bramble king. Useless, prickly, and highly dangerous. A leader who will gladly burn down the entire nation just to protect his own ego.
And that's exactly what happens.
Civil war breaks out between Abimelech and his own subjects in Shechem. He actually burns the Tower of Shechem, killing 1,000 people inside, literally fulfilling the fire from the bramble prophecy. He burns his own people alive.
But he gets his comeuppance in a very specific, humiliating way.
He attacks a tower in a town called Thebes. He's pushing close, trying to burn the wooden door, and a woman on the roof drops a piece of a millstone, the heavy upper grinding stone.
Just bonk.
Crushes his skull entirely, and his final act is pure, unadulterated pride. As he's dying, he calls his armor-bearer and says, draw thy sword and slay me, that men say not of me, a woman slew him.
He was literally worried about his public reputation while his brain was leaking out.
And yet, Scripture records exactly who killed him for all of history. The irony is permanent. He died exactly as he lived, serving his own ego.
Let's move on to Section 5. Jephthah. This guy has a really rough start, doesn't he?
Jephthah is the ultimate outcast. He is the son of a harlot. His legitimate half-brothers drive him out, saying, you will not inherit with us. He flees to the land of Tob and gathers a gang of vain men. He effectively becomes a bandit leader, a mob boss.
But then the Ammonites attack Israel, and the elders of Gilead, the very some people who probably let him get kicked out in the first place, come crawling back. They need a fighter.
It's that classic, we hate you until we need you dynamic. Jephthah calls them out on it instantly. Did you not hate me and expel me out of my father's house? But he agrees to lead them, provided he becomes the permanent head of the tribe if he wins. He negotiates his own promotion.
And initially, he's actually quite diplomatic. He tries to negotiate with the Ammonite king, reciting all this history. He really knows his Bible, so to speak. But war is inevitable.
And this is where it goes horribly, horribly wrong. The rash vow.
This is one of the most difficult, gut-wrenching passages in the Old Testament.
The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him, so he has God's power. He doesn't need to do anything else. But Jephthah, perhaps feeling deeply insecure because of his background, tries to bargain with God. He treats Yahweh like a pagan deity you have to bribe to get a favor.
He vows, if you give me victory, whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering.
He was probably expecting a sheep or a goat. In those days, animals were often kept on the ground floor of the house at night.
But he wins the battle. He comes home in triumph, and who comes out?
Behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances, and she was his only child.
It's just heartbreaking. He tears his clothes.
Yeah.
But then he blames her. He says, alas, my daughter, thou hast brought me very low.
That is typical abuser logic. Look what you made me do. And the real tragedy is he doesn't take the vow back. Leviticus 27 actually offers a legal way to redeem a vow with money if it involves a human person. But Jephthah is either too ignorant of the law or too fiercely stubborn to use it. He thinks keeping a foolish pagan-style vow is more important than the life of his own child.
The source material says, he did with her according to his vow. I know some people try to argue he just sent her to a nunnery or something like that to soften it.
The text explicitly mentions a burnt offering. It's horrific. While some scholars desperately try to soften it, the plain reading suggests a literal human sacrifice, something God explicitly hates and repeatedly forbids. It shows how deeply Canaanized Jephthah's mind was. He was fighting for Yahweh, but he was thinking exactly like a pagan.
It is a horror story of religious foolishness. And Jephthah's violence doesn't end there. We have the incident with the tribe of Ephraim right after.
Right. Ephraim is the tribe that always complains they weren't invited to the party. They did it with Gideon, and now they do it with Jephthah. They threaten to burn Jephthah's house down. Civil war erupts again. But Jephthah isn't Gideon. He doesn't use smooth diplomacy. He just fights. His men seized the fords of the Jordan River to catch the fleeing Ephraimites.
And we get the famous shibboleth test.
This is linguistic tribalism at its absolute deadliest. The men of Gilead would stop a fugitive at the river and ask him to say the word shibboleth, which means a stream or an ear of corn. But the Ephraimites had a distinct dialect accent. They literally couldn't make the sh sound. They would say sibboleth.
And if they missed the H?
They were killed on the spot. 42,000 Israelites fell at the river. It shows how badly the nation is fracturing. They are slaughtering their own brothers over regional pronunciation. You don't talk like us, so you die.
Wow. Okay, moving to section 6, we come to probably the most famous character in the entire book, the guy everyone knows, Samson.
Samson, the ancient superhero, the man of steel, but also, deeply, the man of clay. I often call him strength without character.
He starts with such immense promise. A miracle baby born to a barren woman. The angel appears to his parents. He's a Nazirite from the womb.
The Nazirite vow is the key to his whole life. It's found in Numbers chapter 6. 3 strict rules: no wine or grapes, no touching dead bodies, and no razor ever on his head. He was supposed to be completely set apart, holy to the Lord.
But looking at his actual life, he doesn't seem very holy at all.
He treats his sacred calling like a joke. He repeatedly seeks out Philistine women, which was forbidden. He kills a lion and then goes back and touches its dead carcass to get honey out of it, violating the no dead bodies rule. He throws a feast, which in the Hebrew literally means a drinking party, obviously violating the wine rule.
He's just breaking all the rules, one by one.
He is. He lives entirely by his base appetites. I saw her. She pleased me. Get her for me. He is the physical embodiment of the nation of Israel. Uniquely empowered by God, but constantly lusting after the things of the enemy.
And yet God still uses him. His feats of strength are incredible.
They are unbelievable, tearing a lion apart with his bare hands, catching 300 foxes. Just think about the sheer logistics of that. Tying their tails together with torches to burn the Philistine grain fields, killing 1,000 men with just the jawbone of a donkey.
It is Looney Tunes level violence.
It is absolute chaos. But notice this. Samson never leads an army. Deborah had Barak and 10,000 men. Gideon had his 300. Samson always works alone. He delivers Israel somewhat, but he doesn't lead Israel. He's a weapon. He's not a leader.
And then he meets Delilah.
And this is the beginning of the tragic end. She is hired by the Philistine lords to find the secret of his great strength.
And Samson thinks it's a game. He flirts with the danger. He lies to her 3 separate times. Bind me with fresh bowstrings. Bind me with brand new ropes. Weave my hair into the loom.
You'd think he'd realize, hey, every single time I tell this woman how to trap me, armed Philistines suddenly jump out of the closet.
Right. How dense can you be?
It shows how completely blinded he was by lust and his own arrogance. He really thought he was invincible. Finally, she presses him daily until his soul is vexed unto death. He just gives up. He reveals the Nazirite secret. No razor has ever come upon my head.
And he falls asleep on her lap. She calls the barber.
And then comes one of the absolute saddest verses in the whole Bible. He wakes up and says, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself. He fully expects the power to still be there. And the text adds, he wist not, he did not know, that the Lord was departed from him.
That chills me. He didn't even know the power was gone.
He thought the strength was his. He forgot it was a borrowed gift connected to a holy covenant. When the covenant was fully broken, the presence of God left.
So the Philistines take him. They put out his eyes, which is fitting since he followed the lust of his eyes his whole life, so he loses them, and they make him grind grain like an animal in prison.
It is total grinding humiliation. He becomes a literal circus animal for the pagan god Dagon. But then the text gives us this tiny glimmer of hope. It says, howbeit, the hair of his head began to grow again.
It's not that the hair itself is magical, right? It's not like spinach for Popeye.
No. It symbolizes that God's grace is still available and that Samson is finally humbling himself. The final act happens in the grand temple of Dagon. Thousands of Philistines are cheering, mocking him and his God. Samson prays one last prayer. Notice he doesn't pray, save me. He prays, strengthen me, I pray thee, only this once, that I may be avenged.
And he pushes the main pillars.
The whole house falls. He dies right there with his enemies. The dead which he slew at his death were more than in his life. It's a victory, sure, but a tragic, suicidal one. He destroyed the Philistine leadership, but he died buried in the rubble of his own compromised life.
So Samson is gone,
Yeah.
And now we hit section 7. And honestly, if you thought it was bad before, the floor just completely drops out here. The sources call this final section the unraveling.
Yes. The narrative abruptly shifts. There are no more heroes. No more judges are raised up. Just that dark refrain. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. We move into two domestic stories that show the total religious and moral collapse of the entire nation.
First, we have Micah. This story is just bizarre. Micah steals silver from his own mother.
1,100 shekels of silver, an absolute fortune. He eventually confesses, returns it, and instead of scolding him, his mother blesses him. She says, "Dedicated be my silver to the Lord." And then she takes that silver and has a silversmith make an idol.
Talk about mixed signals. I'm dedicating this to Yahweh by blatantly breaking Yahweh's second commandment.
It is complete religious confusion. This is syncretism at its peak, mixing truth with pagan error. Micah builds a house of gods right in his living room. He makes an ephod. Then a wandering Levite, a priest who is effectively unemployed and drifting, comes by. Micah hires him on the spot.
Be unto me a father and a priest, and I will give thee 10 shekels and a suit of apparel.
It is religion for hire. Micah says, "Now I know the Lord will do me good, seeing I have a Levite to my priest." He literally treats the priest like a magic rabbit's foot. He thinks he can just buy God's favor.
And then the tribe of Dan shows up. They are migrating, looking for territory because they failed to take their own allotted land. They find Micah's house.
They steal the expensive idols. And they steal the priest. They basically say to the Levite, is it better to be a priest for one man's house or for a whole tribe in Israel?
It's a corporate promotion.
And the priest is glad. His heart is glad. He has zero loyalty to Micah or to God's law. He just takes the idols and goes with the stronger army. The Danites go up to a peaceful, unsuspecting city called Laish. They slaughter the people who are just minding their own business, burn the city down, and set up Micah's stolen idols.
It's piracy. It's just spiritual piracy.
It shows that worship had become nothing but a commodity. Truth didn't matter at all. Possession did. Might makes right.
And if you thought that was bad, the next story, the Levite and his concubine, is genuinely horrific. I mean, listener discretion heavily advised here. This is widely considered the darkest chapter in Israel's history.
It is the nadir, the absolute bottom of the spiral. A Levite is traveling home with his concubine. They stop for the night in Gibeah, which is in the territory of Benjamin. They sit in the town square, but no one invites them in, which again is a massive failure of ancient hospitality. Finally, an old man takes pity and takes them in.
And then the men of the city Benjamites, actual Israelites, surround the house.
It echoes the story of Sodom and Gomorrah perfectly. They beat on the door and demand to know the Levite. They want to gang rape the male visitor. These are God's covenant people acting like the very worst of the Canaanite pagans they were supposed to drive out.
The host, desperately trying to protect his male guest, offers his own virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine instead, which is cowardly and evil in its own right.
It shows how abysmally low the view of women had sunk in this culture. The Levite, simply to save his own skin, shoves his concubine out the door to the mob, and the men of Gibeah abuse her all night long. In the morning, the Levite opens the door, and she is lying on the threshold with her hands on the doorframe.
The text is somewhat ambiguous about whether she is dead or alive right at that exact moment.
He says, "Up, let us be going." Absolutely zero compassion. But she doesn't answer. She is dead.
And his reaction? He puts her dead body on a donkey, travels all the way home, takes a knife, cuts her body into 12 pieces, and sends them via messengers to the 12 tribes of Israel.
It is a grotesque, shocking message. He is forcing the entire nation to look at what has happened. He's saying, look at this rot. This is what we have become.
And the nation actually gathers. They are finally united as one man, but it's for a funeral and a massive civil war.
They demand that the tribe of Benjamin hand over the guilty men of Gibeah for execution. But Benjamin refuses. They choose blind tribal loyalty over basic justice. They defend the rapists simply because they are our guys. So total war breaks out.
And it is a bloodbath.
Initially, Benjamin actually wins some battles because they have these elite left-handed slingers, 700 of them, who could sling a stone at a hair and not miss.
There's that left-handed detail again.
Exactly. But eventually, the sheer numbers of the United Israelite Army overwhelm them. They wipe out the entire tribe of Benjamin. They kill 25,000 men. They burn the cities, the women, the children. Only 600 men manage to survive, hiding out in a cave at the Rock of Rimmon.
And then the other tribes have this sudden moment of regret. Oh no, we just wiped out a brother. One tribe is lacking in Israel today.
But their solution is just more twisted, horrifying logic. During the war, they had sworn an oath not to give any of their daughters to Benjamin. So to find wives for the 600 survivors and save the tribe, they literally check the attendance sheet from the war. They see that the town of Jabesh Gilead didn't show up to fight.
So they attack Jabesh Gilead.
They slaughter everyone, men, women, children, except for 400 young virgins. And they take them and give them to the Benjamites as wives.
That is horrifying. We saved you from extinction by massacring another one of our own towns.
And even that isn't enough. They are still short 200 wives. So they tell the remaining Benjamites, hey, there's an annual religious festival down in Shiloh. Go hide in the vineyards. When the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance, just jump out and kidnap them.
Just state-sanctioned kidnapping to fix a civil war.
It is total moral insanity. The solution to violence is just more extreme violence. The solution to a broken oath is mass kidnapping. The book ends with this patchwork Band-Aid solution that truly solves nothing. The women are dragged off, the tribes just go home to their tents, and the moral compass of the nation is completely shattered into dust.
And that brings us to the outro, the final verdict of the book.
The book closes with that exact same verse we started with, echoing like a heavy funeral bell. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes.
So what does this all mean for us? Why is this dark, depressing book in the Bible?
It serves as a stark, glaring warning. It proves that human nature, left completely unchecked, does not spiral upward toward progress and enlightenment. It spirals downward toward chaos and depravity. It shows that freedom, defined solely as doing whatever I want, leads to the very worst kind of slavery.
And it really highlights the desperate need for real leadership.
Exactly. The repetitive cycle of Judges creates a deep hunger in the reader. You read this and you scream, we need a real king! We need someone who won't die like Othniel, who won't make foolish vows like Jephthah, who isn't flawed and lust-driven like Samson, and who isn't a burning bramble like Abimelech.
It points directly to the need for a deliverer who can fix the human heart, not just the temporary military situation.
Precisely. The Judges were just temporary band-aids on a gaping, infected wound. The book historically prepares the way for the monarchy, for David, but ultimately for the Messiah. It shows us that we absolutely cannot save ourselves. Left to our own devices, we end up in Gibeah.
Here's a provocative thought to leave you, our listeners, with today. If Judges shows that society unravels when everyone defines their own truth, and that human leaders, even the superpowered, divinely appointed ones, eventually fail, what does that say about our modern reliance on political solutions for what are essentially deep spiritual problems?
That is the ultimate question. The book leaves us standing in the smoking ashes asking who is actually in charge, and if the answer is me, then we are in serious trouble.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. This was a heavy one, but a necessary one.
Indeed it was. Until next time.